Um, so thanks very much, everyone, for coming along. Yeah, hopefully it's going to be a session that you find really useful. We're delighted to be joined with Daniel Bradley from the Grounds Management Association today, who's going to take us through some hints and tips regarding spring operations for pitches. So I've kind of went through the housekeeping just now, but just in case any more have kind of jumped on the call since then. So just if you can keep yourself on mute just whilst we're going through, but feel free to use the chat function if you've got any questions as we go, or feel free to turn on your mic and ask a question if you'd prefer to ask one rather than type it. Don't forget, no question's a silly one. So we're all here to hopefully learn something from tonight. So if you've got a question that you're thinking of, there's probably at least a couple of other people who've also got a question too. We are recording the webinar tonight. So if there's bits that you kind of hear that you think, actually, I need to go back and revisit what was said on that, this will be getting sent round along with the slide deck as well. So don't worry too much about scribbling too many notes as well. And yeah, hopefully you'll all find this really useful. So just a quick kind of update from a Kent FA point of view. So I'm just going to give a bit of information regarding pitch power and the grass pitch funding, a little bit about the Hive groundskeepers community and also the Grassroots Football Awards. Then I'll be handing over to Daniel to take us through the main part of this evening, and then we'll finish up with a kind of general Q&A to answer some of your questions, both that was posted beforehand, but also any that arise during the night. So in terms of a pitch power and grass pitch funding update, so we're coming towards the end of March now. So for those that are using pitch power to assess the current standard of pitches, the inspection window 2, which is the second one of the season, is due to close at the end of this month. So for those of you that are already in receipt of the grass pitch maintenance funding, this is the compulsory window for an assessment to take place. So if you haven't already done it, you've got just over a week or so to make sure that you get an assessment done in this window. Just gonna mute someone there. So we've got some support resources which will hopefully help you to be able to undertake those pitch power assessments if you haven't yet done one before. So we've got a pitch power cheat sheet. On the slide deck, you can click into these and you'll be able to then see these documents as well. But we've got a cheat sheet which basically will assist you in completing the physical part of the assessment in about 6 minutes. So a lot of people have kind of said, oh, the assessment takes too long. We've got a 7-8 pitch site and it's taking too long to do. So we've put this resource together to hopefully speed up that process for you, to make it a bit easier. We've got a video which will also show you how that physical assessment takes place in 6 minutes. That's also available on our YouTube channel as well. Then alongside that, we've also got a webinar which we delivered last summer, which was a bit of an insight into the grass pitch funding. And in that, you get a deep dive into pitch power, which will show you exactly how to do the assessment, what sort of pictures you need to take, and yeah, effectively how the system works. And then added to that, we've got the grass pitch improvement guide, which is basically your manual on how to apply for the funding and get onto the program. Just as a reminder for those that aren't on the funding program, so there's up to £12,800 available per pitch to spend on enhanced maintenance. So this is over a 6-year period, and the funding tapers off from after the first couple of years. And then there's also a further £50,000 available to purchase machinery. So both of those funds are only eligible. You're only eligible to apply for funding for those if you've got a pitch power report that's been completed after an assessment. So key starter really is to make sure you get pitch power started if you haven't already. And if you're on the program, do use it, because Daniel, who's delivering the session tonight, is the person that puts together those reports, and in it will have bespoke advice and support that will be specific to your site. So yeah, definitely a really valuable resource that's proven effective in improving the quality of pitches. We've also got the Hive groundskeepers community. So if you're not aware of what this is, it's effectively a portal which has been developed by the Football Foundation, where groundskeepers can share information about how they're tackling certain problems, can ask questions and for advice on different subjects around grass pitches and groundskeeping. So in terms of who's on there, so there's obviously various different groundskeepers in the community from across the country. We do have a Kent specific group as well. So you can search for the Kent group, and you'll be able to find people who are more local to you and share knowledge and best practice. But there's also contributions from the Football Foundation staff. There's County FA and FA staff on there as well that are happy to answer questions. And of course, we've also got the Grounds Management Association with that real expert advice that they're able to give too. We've also got the head groundsman from Wembley who's on there, Carl Standley. So he's very active in terms of sharing advice and support in terms of what he's learned whilst he's had his time in the industry. And obviously looking after Wembley's pitch is quite a different beast to grassroots pitches, but he's always willing to share tips and advice. So yeah, it's a really good way of getting that kind of expert knowledge from him as well. So to access it, you just need to visit footballfoundation.hivelearning.com, or if you just go onto Google and type in groundskeeping community, it should come up. If not, just drop me an email and I'll be able to send over this link, although it will be sat in this slide deck as well. And then finally, before I hand over to Daniel, so we've got the Grassroots Football Awards open for nominations at the moment. So just a reminder that this is the FA's National Awards. So the way it works is when you submit a nomination, you go into two sets of awards. So there's the Kent FA Grassroots Workforce Awards that you'll be nominated for. The winners of those awards will then go through to the national awards. So we'll go through to potentially an event at Wembley where you could be crowned the national winner for one of the awards. So there's various different awards available. One of them is the Grounds Team of the Year award. So this award is one that tends to not get many nominations. So the chance of you winning the category is actually a lot higher than in any other category. There's been previous years where we've had under 5 nominations. So it really is worth just putting your hat into the ring or getting someone to nominate you because, yeah, you've got a very good chance of winning. So nominations are open until Wednesday, the 3rd of April. And the link is also there for how you do that nomination. But just to give you a little bit of a flavour of what to expect with regards to who the winner is, I've got a little video here, and hopefully the sound is going to work okay, which will show you last year's winner and kind of what they currently do. So, Daniel, could you just let me know if the sound comes through okay?
Yeah, I'll let you know.
So.
Yeah, that's playing,
We
Aidan.
are in Crawley Green Recreation Ground in Luton, and this is a public park. We've got 7 pitches here. We share between 25 youth teams and 6 adult teams. We've gone from a situation where our pitches were in a very poor condition to now where we've got 1 advanced, many good, and some needing improvement. but we're still on that journey.
There's lots of steps going up to the heroes in the Premier League, but there's hundreds of thousands, millions probably, kids playing grassroots. And if every club had an Owen, it would just make it much more enjoyable.
He's one of the best groundsmen in the country. Like, the pitches here are quality.
Yeah, he just puts in lots of hard work to really see through the club to just get it to that amazing standard.
As any groundsman would tell you, groundskeeping is a passion, and the one thing I think that keeps me going is knowing that generations of kids will have the ability to play on these park pitches well into the future.
So as you can see, it's the winner of that was the national winner, and he's just like everyone that's on the call here, really. So just trying to make sure that there's good grass pitches available for players to use. So yeah, get your nominations in, and yeah, hopefully look forward to crowning at least one of you a winner at the Kent FA Awards, and maybe even a winner on a national scale as well. So oops, there we go. So yeah, I'll just now hand over to Daniel from the Grounds Management Association. He's our regional pitch advisor, writes all of your pitch power reports, and yeah, is full of expert knowledge on groundskeeping. So yeah, make sure you ask him lots of difficult questions, and yeah, hopefully we'll get a lot out of this evening.
Thanks a lot, Aidan. And can you hear me all right?
Yep, can hear you all okay.
Good stuff. And yeah, I welcome those difficult questions, to be fair. And let me just try and get this into presenter mode. There we go. Yeah, thanks a lot, Aidan, for the introduction, and it's good to have you all on the call this evening. I won't be able to see the chat box, and shortly what I'll do is turn myself off the camera, because I always go a bit funny, like staring at the screen while talking. It freaks me out when I can see my face in the corner. But yeah, thanks all for coming on this evening. And as I said, this is really kind of a session run for yourselves, and we're putting this together to try and aid you to improve your pitches towards the back end of this season, and everything you do from here on after kind of contributes to the improvements next season. And Aidan, that video that you shared there was really fitting, showing Owen, and it absolutely testament to what you said. It's kind of everything that you do in grounds is because you're passionate about your club and you want the improvements to take place, and it links into the Football Foundation funding. But one of the early steps that you can do is be on the webinar this evening and kind of tune in and try and take something from the information that we're going to pass over to you this evening, and hopefully you can utilize that to improve your pitches. I'll move on to the next slide now. This evening, please do feel free to use the chat box, and at the end of the presentation, there'll be opportunity to unmute yourself and come and ask some questions. There's around 17 slides. Some of them we'll skim over very quickly. Some are signposting to other information that's out there. I don't want this evening to be a death by PowerPoint evening, and to me to turn the camera on and you're all asleep, after an hour or 45 minutes or whatever. So we will skim through some stuff quite quickly and allow opportunity for you to ask some questions, maybe tailored specifically for your own pitches and your own sites. Aidan's already forwarded me some of the questions that have already been submitted, so we'll look to answer those this evening. But essentially what we're going to be covering this evening is your typical end of season renovations and the operations that you might consider taking, and implementing into your pitch. Now that I say in close brackets, we have reached, spring, preparing for spring operations. Some of the best practice considerations associated with those operations, and then mainly kind of touching on more technical aspects, such as the operations that you want to be carrying out, such as decompaction, restoring grass cover through overseeding, cleaning the pitch out and reducing thatch levels, restoring surface levels, and also weed control. Now, what Aidan's mentioned it earlier, what I'll do as well is after the session is send this slide deck over to Aidan, and he'll get it out to you, most likely tomorrow. But with that, what I'm going to do now is switch the camera off, and I will start the presentation and talk you through this evening. So you may have heard the term end of season renovations. Typically, it's operations to benefit the pitch that are carried out when football has finished at your site. Traditionally, that was the main time to carry out some of these more the specialist operations in terms of overseeding, top dressing, and the points that we're going to cover tonight. Generally, at that time of year, there's fewer pitch demands, allowing for the works to take place and establish. Generally, weather conditions are better towards the end of May, and you have sunny conditions. Materials such as top dressing are easier to work into the surface. Some of the negative points about waiting until the end of May or the end of the football season, and you might have experienced this at your own sites in recent years, is it's a very busy time for contractors and suppliers. So generally, if you've got a contracting operation and you're booked in for end of season renovations, these guys are very busy at this time, and they're traveling around from site to site trying to complete the works and trying to get all of these operations done on your pitches. In recent years, and this is really the main one for kind of trying to switch the narrative about end of season operations to spring operations, is in recent years it's been unfavourable conditions due to the heat waves and the droughts that we've had. In terms of, I know a lot of clubs completed their football season last year and they had their pitches overseeded in May, and then through June, July, we didn't have any rain, and only we had a kind of began to get a bit more wet weather in August and into September, and they had about a 40% strike rate on the seed that they invested in May. I know in an ideal world you'd all have wonderful irrigation systems on your pitches and be able to provide sufficient water to kind of carry on the germination program from overseeding into germination and then establishment of the juvenile grass, but it's not reasonably practical, and in many cases, or in every case almost, is you're playing catch up with the weather, and that's the one thing that you can't beat. The other thing to consider at end of season is that who will be responsible for the establishment of that pitch and kind of checking in every so often to see how it's being maintained and continuing the cutting. I know when the football season finishes, a lot of people, switch to cricket or they go on their summer holidays. So there's less people around at the club, and it can be challenging to kind of continue the maintenance into the summer. So this is where I'm suggesting that we reconsider end of season pitch maintenance, and we consider it to be more operations for the spring. So preparing for spring works. If you are a recipient of the Football Foundation Grass Pitch Maintenance funding, you can use your funding to hire in equipment to carry out some of these operations. Now, that might be something that you're not comfortable with, and that's absolutely fine. There are fantastic contractors in your region, but what I would suggest is that you contact them early and you speak to them early, and they're aware of the conditions that are at your site. They're aware of the works that you want to carry out at your site. Any time from now onwards, realistically, if you're looking to have works carried out in the spring in terms of the operations that we'll talk on later. Where possible, select a suitable window in fixtures. I know, and I've spoken to a few clubs recently that completely shut down over Easter. They've got a 2-week gap of fixtures during Easter. So what they're doing ground conditions and weather being suitable, is they're going to get some seed into the ground in a couple of weeks' time and carry out a decompaction operation, because they've identified a gap in their fixture window. Now we're not sure what the weather's going to do. When are we ever sure? And well, I guess one thing that's been guaranteed this winter has been rainfall. But with conditions now, we're hitting 16 degrees during the daytime, and clubs are calling me and saying the grass is growing, the grass has started growing again, and we can't get on to cut it because the pitches are still wet and holding water. Now, those conditions will improve, and this isn't to say that you need to rush out and carry out these operations. You just need to be aware of ground conditions and the the weather that we're receiving at the moment and the weather that's coming in the future. You can get on the Met Service website, the 10-day forecast that's reasonably accurate in terms of trends. The 2-week one, anything more than that, and really you don't, it can't be that reliable in my professional opinion. But what's to say that we've got decent conditions now, and if your pitch, if you can get on your pitch, you can start to consider carrying out some works to improve it. Now, it's not a perfect scenario because the pitches are still in use. So you will lose a little bit of cover if your cover is poor at the moment. Grass will get kicked out a little bit. The more grass cover that you can retain, the better strike rate at germination and establishment of seeding that you will have in your surface. So this is where it's something to consider in terms of splitting your traditional operations. So where you might have your pitch overseeded at the end of the season, it might be a good idea to consider, early to mid-April, getting some seed in the ground then, and then revisiting it in the autumn and having your pitch overseeded again then. And would always recommend having your autumn decompaction works carried out ready for the winter ahead then. But with that, in the spring and in the early to mid-autumn, you are guaranteed rainfall, whereas now we look back at the trends of the previous couple of years, you're not guaranteed rainfall during the summer, and it can be to the detriment of the pitch. And temperatures can soar and we can have these heat waves. It also provides an opportunity to make light repairs and top up what would be traditional end of season work. So what I'm saying now, and one of the questions that came in, is you can get seed into the ground now, and you can start to make these light repairs ready for carrying out kind of more major works, as we get into the spring. And one of the questions that was sent in, I know, was about goalmouth repairs, and we'll pick that up towards the end of the session. But as with most of the things that I always talk about on these sessions and do really try and promote is a little and often approach to these repairs. It's incredibly difficult to carry out full pitch works when they've really suffered over the winter. Where possible, a little and often approach is the best way forward. The other thing to mention, and Aidan's already touched on this, is do you have an up-to-date pitch power report? It's fine me providing all of these generic recommendations and talking you through the operations this evening on the webinar, but it really is best practice to have a pitch power report carried out, so you've got it there, and you can provide that information to a contractor that might be carrying out the work, or it allows you to draw down your next instalment of your grass pitch maintenance fund grant. And speaking of contractors, and also the Hive, if you're not on it already, I really would recommend signing up and just familiarizing yourself with the wealth of information that's available on there. In terms of if your pitch improvement journey is something that you've just begun with, there's a lot of information on there that will help you and really be beneficial at this time of year, and aid in you making decisions, in terms of the direction to go when you're thinking about spending your grant money. As I said, I'm not going to go over this evening because the information's up there for you to digest and look over in your own time, but I've provided the links in this presentation to allow you to, just click here and it'll take you to the page and provide information on kind of, selecting the correct contractor for your the operations that you want to carry out. As well as that, there is a page here providing information on preparing your pitch for these renovation operations that we've spoke about. So these are really two worthwhile links to visit, to allow you to build up a little bit more knowledge ahead of kind of, some of the works that might be carried out on your pitch. And here's the landing page for it. The link is here. I know Aidan had it in his other one, so you'll be bombarded with it double, so there's no excuses to miss it. But yeah, do go on there. It allows you, and join the Kent one as well. The main forum on there now has, we're not far off getting towards 4,000 users signed up on there. And it's just one of the nice things that you can, it's comparing it to a social media platform similar, but there's a lot of information and learning resources on there as well. People post photos of their pitches. I know because at the moment it's the GMA's Grounds Week, so we've got a promotion on there to kind of, post a really good photo of your pitch and tag it with the hashtag Grounds Week. It's all about kind of spreading the message far and wide and encouraging more people to kind of look, and value the great work that you all do on your pitches. And this week, really, Grounds Week, is a celebration of that. So that's the Hive and the information that's on there. The other one to signpost to is the GMA's toolkit. Again, you've got the link here, which will direct you straight to the GMA's toolkit. The difference between the Hive and the GMA's toolkit is the GMA's toolkit isn't interactive, so you can't post on it, but it is a huge resource for information. Not only football as well, and this is the one thing to mention: if you've got cricket or either code of rugby, so rugby league or rugby union, it might be something that you want to consider. I know the UCB and cricket side of things have put a lot of work into developing this, and we've worked closely with them to develop the football side of things as well. And it includes, for an example here, operations that you might consider, or this is just an example, operations that you might want to, seasonal maintenance for February for your football pitches. But there's all the months of the year. There's lots of other information on there. So similar to the Hive, do sign with this one. You don't need to sign up or create a user account. With the Hive, you just need to select enter your email address and create a password. But with this one, you can just follow the link, and you'll be directly on the GMA's toolkit. And again, these are to be considered tools. Same as everyone's got a divoting fork in the shed, same as everyone's got some kind of lawnmower. It's just information should be seen as a tool as well to help you make best decisions in improving your pitches. So with that signposting out the way, we're going to get into the more technical aspects of the presentation and the operations. And for me, one of the most important is to decompact your pitch. Aeration and decompaction is, if you have a limited budget and you had a top priority, it would be to get some holes into your pitch to relieve the compaction that has taken place over the winter months through not only play, but through, equipment on your pitches, cutting, and everything else. What tends to happen, and the image on the top left perfectly indicates it, is that through the winter, through play, through compaction of the soil profile, through weathering and, equipment on the pitch, the soil profile will become compact. And that's where generally people struggle with poor rooting and waterlogging of their pitch. You'll probably all be familiar with a piece of equipment called a VertiDrain. There are other forms of solid tine decompaction machines such as a Wiedemann, and really it's one of the best things that you can do to your pitches in the spring to improve the health of the soil and the grass plant moving forward. There's linear decompaction, so you might have heard of earthquaking and shockwaving, which basically is VertiDraining is solid tine vertical decompaction, and earthquaking or shockwaving is linear decompaction. Now, the one thing to remember is linear decompaction should really only take place in the autumn. What tends to happen if you do it in the spring is that you get the swell and contraction of the clay soils, in that they swell during the winter, and then as the summer goes through, they contract, and you can run the risk of having cracks open in your pitch. And it's similar to slitting. Realistically, now we wouldn't suggest continuing slitting. If you have a spiker aerator, you're fine to continue using that. But with slitting, what can happen is when you get to spring, the ground doesn't marry back up, and you get the soil taking the path of least resistance, and you can tend to have cracks opening in your pitches, especially in this region really, where it's a lot of the soils are clay dominant, so it can cause some issues. So decompaction, really headline, is to relieve the soil compaction that has taken place during the season. The goal of it is to improve the soil structure to allow for sufficient drainage and gas exchange within the soil. Not only that, but it improves rooting capacity. You think of, grass plant roots can be quite lazy, and if the soil is quite difficult to penetrate through and get deeper, you can imagine just looking at the photo on the left and the image on the top left, the rooting has got a better chance to get lower down within the soil profile, and that's your pitch stability, through the season. When people say the pitch is cutting up, a lot of it is to do with root depth. So the deeper we can get the roots and the stronger we can get the roots, the more stability your pitch is going to have. It's an opportunity to carry out decompaction along with top dressing to help ameliorate the soil profile and improve the soil texture. That will allow these drainage channels or tine holes to become drainage channels, essentially, for the water to percolate down through the sand that has been added to the pitch if you are top dressing, and sustain drainage through the year. Now, when often what will happen is the pitch gets capped off in the first top 5-10 centimeters. So what we need to do then is use a shallow tine aerator to open it back up to those decompaction and decompaction holes and sustain the soil structure. Carrying out aeration and decompaction will accelerate the breakdown of organic matter or thatch in the soil profile as well, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. And it's preferable to aim for a maximum achievable depth with heave added to the pitch. And the heave you'll see here is where the tine tilts back and creates all of these channels within the soil, the fissures in the soil. If you're not carrying out this yourself, I think it's a good, well, it's best practice really to, speak to a contractor and ask what size tines they're using, how deep do they plan to go, and what heave, and just don't be afraid to ask these questions to your contractor that might be performing the works, in terms of finding out what's actually doing it. It's fair enough we're having the pitch verti-draining, but I want to know, how deep is that verti-drain going? What's the spacing that you're using? What size tines are you using on this pitch? So don't be hesitant to ask those questions. And again, at the bottom, slitting, similar to linear decompaction, will create slits in the soil that are susceptible for cracking. So that's decompaction. Really, it's kind of joint priority with overseeding your pitch in the season. And again, if budgets are tight, I really would suggest ring fencing enough funds to have this operation carried out twice a year on your pitch, and you really will notice a difference in improved drainage. The one thing to mention though is that the soil conditions must be right. It's no good performing this on a waterlogged pitch. If you're doing it yourselves, obviously I think you'll have a good grasp of what are suitable conditions and what aren't. If you're engaging with a contractor, they will also have, know what conditions are suitable and what aren't. But just reiterate that, we want you want the best bang for your buck, as it were, and you want to really be getting as deep as possible in the soil profile and adding as much heave as possible without compromising or damaging the surface. So that's decompaction. If not top, shortly after overseeding your pitch as a priority, really. Moving on to restoring grass cover and overseeding. So again, probably joint top priority with decompaction. And earlier in the session, I spoke about the risks of doing this at the end of the playing season, and it has become more and more risky, and it's not something that I would recommend doing. I would recommend splitting your overseeding to either during the spring or into the autumn. Both if preferable, but it really depends on the coverage that you've got at the moment on your site and how much you're taking into the summer. Perennial ryegrass, which is the desirable grass plant used in winter sport pitches, doesn't naturally regenerate. So if you have got a really sparse covering on your pitch, and you often see it when you get to summer, the pitch has got grass back on it again. Yes, perennial ryegrass will recover, but it doesn't regenerate. And most probably what you're seeing is an influx of weed grasses, so annual meadowgrass or Poa annua in your pitch, and this isn't a desirable grass plant species, and it's really susceptible, and it suffers through drought conditions, and it doesn't like close mowing or a lot of wear on it at all. So often these grasses get kicked out quite readily, very shallow rooting. So really one of the best investments that you can make into your pitch, and it's not going to happen overnight to improve the grass cover. It's one of those things that you need to build on annually, is to invest in good quality seed and invest in proper mechanical overseeding of your pitches. most likely you wouldn't have this equipment in-house to perform the works yourselves. Realistically, it's probably better to engage with a contractor than to think about hiring the equipment in, even if you've got a suitable powered tractor, unless you really know what you're doing in terms of application rate of seed and the passes that you'll need to be carrying out on your pitch. Sorry, I just had a drink of water. So one thing to mention is that we've got to a time of the year now where if you put seed into the ground, it is going to grow. So those stubborn areas that have been really suffering through the winter, such as goal mouths, centre circles, or lower lying areas of the pitch that tend to hold water, now is the time to try and get out there and get a head start on improving or making the recovery for those areas. So goal mouths especially and centre circles, you're really going to struggle with growing grass if they're bare, to be completely honest. So again, adopt a little and often approach in just weekly before fixtures, getting some seed into the goal mouths, getting some holes just with a garden fork into the goal mouths to help them to drain, and to, if you've got dressing, applying a good couple of wheelbarrows full perhaps of top dressing into the goal mouths to try and bring these back early doors before you start your main pitch works. Again, if you can cover these the goal mouths to accelerate germination, so you can get specific germination netting. The downside is it's quite expensive. The positives are that it keeps animals off. Hopefully it will keep people or dog walkers off if you suffer from that at your site as well, and it helps to retain the moisture in the ground, as well as heat to allow germination and establishment of grass seed. One thing I would say is don't leave it down for weeks on end, but if you are treating goal mouths and trying to promote germination and establishment, then what you can use is scaffold netting. It works perfectly fine and serves the same purpose of the more expensive germination sheeting. But what really you're trying to do is conserve moisture into the ground and also heat to allow germination. So talking about grass seed, there are two different types of application realistically. There is a dimple seeder and a disc seeder. Now, either is fine and either is going to get seed into the ground. It's preferable to use a disc seeder, however. Generally, you get a better strike rate. The thing is that the disc seeder seeds in channels, so you will need to, or your contractor will need to, work out the overall application rate and seed in multiple directions, a minimum of three really we'd expect. So generally that's a diagonal, a lengthways and a crossways, and realistically you're looking at an overseeding rate of 35 grams per square meter, which roughly equates to 10 to 12 bags per 11v11 full-size pitch. Again, most contractors would be happy to apply seed that you have purchased yourselves. But what I would say is if you are going to go down the route of engaging with a contractor, just ask them what seed that they're going to be applying when you're getting a quote for overseeding. I'd like to know what's the application rate, what's the seed that you're putting down, and what's the application method. Are you using a disc seeder or are you using a dimple seeder? And it's absolutely fine to ask those questions. What I would say as well is that to buy an extra couple of bags that you can keep in your shed or your store to allow you to make those hand repairs through the playing season. It really is best practice to be able to adopt a little and often approach, and when come the next season or towards the end of this season, when the pitches might take a little bit of wear still, or the goal mouth's a little bit reluctant to come back, or the centre circle, you can carry those repairs out yourselves just by applying seed by hand. It's not recommended to consider full pitch application of seed. I've spoken to clubs previously that have invested in good quality seed, and I said, well, who put it down? And they said, we did. And I said, oh, how? And they'd just run it through a fertilizer spreader all over the pitch, and really it's just it's thrown to the wind and the birds doing that. The biggest thing to think about is good seed soil contact. The seed needs to be in the ground, not necessarily extremely deep in the ground, but it needs to be planted in the ground, and it needs to have that almost dormancy in that it's contacted with the soil properly, and the sufficient heat and the sufficient moisture to promote germination and establishment. But again, overseeding, it's one of the more expensive operations. I can sympathize with that. The price of seed has gone up, and it's an expensive operation to apply it, but it's one of the big ticket items that really give you a good return on investment. But you need to start looking at everything else in terms of giving the best value for money on your investment, in terms of linking it with your decompaction. So the seed that you put in the ground, it can get decent roots down. Otherwise it's not going to be able to reach its full potential and give you the stability that you need in the pitch. So overseeding and decompaction are big ticket items. Moving on to the establishment, I've spoken a little bit about it already, but we'll just run through the bullet points quickly because I'm mindful of the time getting on, and I said I wouldn't bore you to death by PowerPoint. So the rule of thumb is to remember that seed needs 4 things to germinate and establish: sufficient temperature, oxygen and CO2, water and light. Remove one of these things and the seed will struggle. With limited irrigation, seeding between mid-May and August is considered high risk. If conditions don't fall in your favour, seed might struggle to germinate or die post-germination. Perennial ryegrass will typically take 7 to 14 days to germinate. It does depend on the conditions at the time, but now realistically the rule of thumb is when nighttime temperatures or soil temperatures stable around 6 to 8 degrees, you'll be able to grow grass. So realistically, when we look at the winter that we've had, and soil temperatures, you can grow grass or get grass to germinate all winter. So do try and provide a means to water areas that you're treating likely to be bare at the point of seeding, such as goal mouths. Even if that's just a watering can with a rose on it, and again using the sheeting will help to retain that water within the soil profile. For the initial cut, it's better to use a rotary mower rather than a cylinder. It's not essential, but just be really mindful when you have had your pitch overseeded. Allow it to germinate, allow it to get to a suitable height of growth, and then don't take it down really short, but try and sustain it at a decent height and cut it in different directions so it begins to tiller out and establish. The golden rule of thumb to mention with that is to never cut more than 1/3 of the grass leaf, never to remove more than 1/3 of the grass leaf at any one time. So yeah, just it's really difficult. I know, the back end of last summer was ridiculous, and it was, you could have cut your pitch 2-3 times, given the rainfall that we had a week. But just try to, it's all about these little things that improve the health of the grass plant. Moving on to the next slide. So it is important to disturb and remove organic matter or thatch within the pitch. Thatch is the thick layer of sponge material that sits between the base of the grass plant and the soil. And you can see on the image on the left-hand side, this was an inspection that I did quite a while back, and I took a soil core out, and the ground felt very hard beneath, but it had been raining. And so you can see at the very top between those two red bars that I've added, that there's your thatch layer. It's around 20 millimeters in this case, and this is where the water is retained at this site. Beneath that, you can see the very compact soil core. So this is a ground that needed, quite a bit of work. When you look at the grass that's on the top, you look at the thatch layer that you've got, and you look at the compact nature of the soil. So realistically, we're looking at all of the operations that we're mentioning this evening to try and improve this, but not least, cleanliness is key. And the operation that you might consider having carried out is scarification. Now, scarification is fantastic if you have got a significant thatch layer such as this one. But the thing to remember is that if you are having scarification carried out, is that you need to clear those arisings or clear that matter that comes out of the pitch away from the pitch so it doesn't go back into it. Again, harking back to what I said previously, and you're probably sick of it, but a little and often approach here is the best way of doing it. There's if you've got a tractor, one of the things that you can invest in is a turf grooming tool, which is a tool that you attach to your 3-point linkage that allows you to brush, rake, and slip the pitch at the same time. And they're fantastic for keeping good hygiene within your playing surface. So yeah, some of the more it's what was traditionally the Sysys quadruplay. There's lots of different ones out there now. It's not a recommendation for you to go down the line of a Sysys unit. There's many different ones out there and that are available, and the Football Foundation grants can help support you purchase equipment such as that, and Aidan touched on it earlier. So if you're having scarification carried out, then remember to try and remove all the arisings from the pitch. And it's probably an operation that you'll need to leave and complete at the end of the playing season, because it can be quite detrimental to the quality of the pitch if you've got a quite a thick layer of thatch to remove. The alternates are, we talked about turf grooming, chain harrowing or raking can be done through the season in multiple directions, and this prevents that thatch layer building up and helps to remove organic matter from the pitch. You may have seen at professional sports clubs, they use a turf stripper, and strip the surface layer completely off. This should really only be considered in extreme circumstances within grassroots football, because it's really difficult to reinstate a pitch thereafter with limited irrigation, given the times of year that you'll be considering it. But really the takeaway is get your pitch power report carried out. If you have got a significant thatch layer and there is a recommendation for scarification to be carried out, then do engage with a contractor and consider having that work done. If not, a little and often approach of brushing the pitch or raking the pitch will be sufficient to keep your surface in good condition. Moving on to top dressing. Now, I'm not sure if the clubs on this call have had their pitches top dressed in recent years, or if they've had a quote, but quotes for top dressing in recent years have become quite frightening. And really, if your budgets are limited, it's probably not something that you're going to be able to consider doing on a large scale. What you should consider doing, however, is to retain or order some top dressing for goal mouth repairs or isolated repairs. Now, I'm not saying don't overseed your full pitch, but I'm saying if your budgets are limited, there are other priorities initially in terms of getting to a level that you're happy with your grass cover. You've got a decent soil structure sustained through your 2 decompaction operations per year, and hopefully a couple of slitting operations, whether that's carried out in-house or with a contractor. But top dressing is frightening. It is frightening expensive at the moment. It does aid the pitch in terms of smoothing the surface, and it allows a good seed to soil contact when you're overseeding your pitch. But realistically, it's also, you know, quite scary when you see 60 ton of sand, you know, delivered next to your pitch, and then, you know, the next minute it's applied to your pitch and you're like, well, where did that all go? It's beneficial, but it's not you know, top of the list for me personally in terms of advising you early stages of your grass pitch improvement journey. What I would suggest, though, like I mentioned before, is having some supply of top dressing to be able to repair goal mouths and worn areas through the season. If you are going to heavily invest in top dressing, do have a soil analysis carried out to ensure that the materials that are available to you will kind of comply and be suitable for the makeup of the pitch that you are applying it to. So that's another consideration. Try to keep any dressing that you have on site stored in the dry. It's really difficult to start spreading it when it's wet. If you do keep it dry, you can put it through pedestrian top dressers. Sorry, not top dressers, fertilizer spreaders in small amounts to give an area a light dusting, and that does help if you're overseeding by hand these smaller areas. So that's top dressing. Moving on to weed control now, and yeah, weed control is a big one, really. There's a lot of cultural practices that you can do, and we spoke about the scarification, and we spoke about the turf grooming and raking of the pitch. All of these operations help to suppress the cover of weed that you've got. Perennial ryegrass, you know, thrives in an environment where it's treated quite rough, essentially, and encouraged to tiller out and, you know, increase its wear tolerance. Weeds, however, don't have that. The difficulty is that as you lose grass cover, invasive weeds start to seek opportunities and, you know, establish themselves within the pitch. So with all the best will in the world and all the, you know, cultural practices that we promote, you know, there becomes a time where, you know, you have to consider applying a selective herbicide. Now, if you are overseeding your pitch in the spring, you shouldn't apply a selective herbicide within 6 to 8 weeks of that application, because the grass plant in its juvenile stages is susceptible to damage and stress from that application. The thing to consider as well is that if you are applying a selective herbicide and you do have a large coverage of weeds over your pitch, as those weeds die back, you're going to be left with bare soil, which is going to allow more weeds or invasive grasses to come in. So it goes hand in hand really with overseeding, and that's really, you know, if you take that away from this evening, is that if you are going to treat the weeds, you've got to replace what was weed in your pitch with grass. This isn't an operation to do yourselves. You need to engage with a reputable contractor or you know, service that will has the relevant qualifications and tickets to apply the, you know, the herbicide to your pitch. Do be mindful of the conditions that it's being carried out in. You know, obviously you don't want it to be windy because you suffer from drift, and you don't really want to be spraying things that you're, you know, not intended target. The other thing to consider as well is mowing shouldn't take place 3 days before or 3 days after. You should apply, or the contractor should apply the selective herbicide when the grass is growing strongly, so the grass can recover. And that also, you know, it's a contact product, so it takes a while to work its way into the plant from the contact with the leaf. So if it's raining on that day, it's not going to do a lot of good at all. Depending on the product, there will be a rain fast figure on there. So I think it's 24 hours in most cases. But if you do suffer rainfall, you know, following 24 hours after application, it's not going to have the best efficacy, if you want, in terms of treating and suppressing the plant that's there. So realistically, you know, if you're considering overseeding in the spring, this is something to carry out in the summer, and then again, look to oversee the pitch thereafter, heading into late summer, well, heading into autumn realistically. So it's not something that I'd recommend immediately, but later in the year is something to consider depending on the weed cover that you've got. So really that brings us to the end of the main operations. We've got some best practice tips and another page on pitch power and funding that we'll run through, and then we'll answer to the difficult questions that you've been thinking of this evening, and allow me to answer those. So best practice, really, keep seed and dressing in a dry environment. Store open bags sealed and off the ground, and ensure you have enough for top-ups, little and often repairs during the season. Watch the long-term weather forecast, monitor the growth rate of your pitch, and turf health through colour and cut rate. So how much are you cutting and what's the colour of the pitch? You know, that if the pitch starts to show signs of yellowing, it's trying to tell you something, that it's hungry, and a fertilizer application might be considered. Get a head start. Try to make isolated repairs to very worn or bare areas as soon as possible, and you can start doing that as from now, realistically, to kind of get you ahead. Don't neglect machinery. Book in servicing for good time so you're ready to go when the season starts again, or when you're ready to kind of really pick up the cut rate in the spring. So if the mower's been sat in the shed or the garage, you know, for most of winter, you know, don't allow the pitch to get too long before thinking, actually, I better have a look and see how sharp these blades are, or if the oil needs changing, or if there's any oil in there at all. You know, so do be proactive with that and have a think about, you know, getting stuff ready. What you do following your renovation is often more important than what you do during. So again, it's the little things that we can take away, and utilizing the hive and utilizing the grounds management's toolkit to kind of give that best return on investment that you're making into your pitch. And then submit your next pitch power assessment during September or October. so that we can provide in-season maintenance works. So, you know, ideally now, get your pitch power inspection in, receive the report back in good time to allow you to make decisions on what to do in the spring, submit another report later in the year so we can kind of say, you know, where are we at now following the works that you've done during the spring, and provide you some guidance on, you know, in-season maintenance heading into the following season. And then again now, and I had this conversation with a few people today in terms of, you know, the grass has started to grow given the temperatures, but we can't yet get on the pitches. You know, when is a good time to go? And knowing when not to do something is often more important than knowing when to do something. So, you know, the sense might be to, you want to get out and you know, do your decompaction operation on the pitch as early as possible, starting from now. But you know, the pitch conditions just aren't there, and the pitch is, you know, it's still wet within the soil profile and it's not quite draining away. Realistically, you're just going to smear the profile and smear the surface as well. So just hold off and make that judgment call yourselves, looking again, you know, to the long-term weather forecast and trying to pick these weather windows to be able to carry works out. And I know, and I sympathise with you, because it's been incredibly challenging, but there's not a lot that can be done. You cannot beat the weather. As much as you try, you can't beat it. So it's not worth fighting against. So we just need to be ready when conditions are right to move things forward. Moving on to the last slide. I won't dwell on this too much because there's a lot of links in here. I'll just run through it very, very quickly. So again, you know, pitch power is the entry point to funding if you're looking to start this pitch improvement journey. If you're already part of the pitch improvement, you know, journey and you're on the Grass Pitch Maintenance Fund, you know, do get your pitch power assessment done. It is mandatory to carry it out within this inspection window, and you won't be able to draw down your next instalment of your grant until you have carried that out. Keep an eye on what funds are available through the Football Foundation. Aidan touched on the machinery fund earlier, which might be a consideration to clubs that are, you know, that have started their pitch improvement journey or a couple of years into it, to say, how can we, you know, better sustainably manage this pitch in-house? And you might want to consider, you know, purchasing your own equipment to be able to cut the pitch or perform some of these, you know, enhanced works that we've spoken about, such as grooming or aeration of the soil profile through slitting or spiking. So yeah, do keep looped in the funding that's available. That's, I won't dwell on that side too much because it's pretty self-explanatory in the use of pitch power. The other thing to mention is, along with the websites that we've touched on, this, the GMA do offer training courses. So such as more informal evenings as this, you do have structured learning and training courses that you can sign up to. Those that are recipients of the Grass Pitch Maintenance Fund will have likely had to do the online level 1. If you've not done your level 2, do consider doing the level 2. It is beneficial to enhance your knowledge of operations, and you know, again, it will help you to know when to perform works and when not to improve works, and overall help you improve your pitches. So do consider, you know, looking at the offerings that the GMA have on our website. We have spoken about the groundskeeping community, the Hive. Aidan's going to keep you bang up to date with any future seasonal webinars, workshops and support offerings from the Football Foundation, and stuff that we're doing in collaboration with Kent. And on the back of this, please do provide feedback. If there's stuff that I've missed this evening and you want covered in the next session, or you'd like, you know, you have an idea. Again, to reiterate, we're putting these evenings on for you to try and help you improve your pitches. So we're here to help you. Just take that away with you, and anything that we can do to help you improve your pitches, we're all ears. Okay, and whether that's more technical grounds knowledge, whether that's a face-to-face session somewhere in an evening where we get some of this equipment out on a pitch and have a look at it, we're all ears. Just, you know, do provide feedback, you know, in terms of timings, or, you know, you like the online format or you prefer it face-to-face. We're really open to ideas in moving forward and supporting you. Again, the GMA's toolkit, the link's there. You've got all of the links within this presentation. And yeah, realistically, if you're starting this journey, it's not something that's going to be like a light switch and, you know, change overnight and you'll have a fantastic pitch. Year on year, you will make fantastic improvements, but no, it is a journey. So try to prioritize short, medium and long-term tasks, operations and purchases to help you improve your pitch. And we can help you with that and helping you prioritize these operations and where to spend your money to give you the best return on investment. Always do your research, check ground conditions, speak to your contractor, ask lots of questions, check the weather, and ask yourself, what am I trying to achieve by what I'm doing? That's really the most important thing. Before you go out onto the pitch each time and what you're, you know, carrying out the work that you do, just ask yourself the question, what am I trying to achieve by what I'm doing? And that will help clarify and draw on that knowledge that you've gained from hopefully this session, gained from reading your pitch power report, gained from, you know, looking at the Hive groundskeeping community and having conversations with each other. So that brings us to the end of this evening's session. I'm gonna change, I'll stop presenting actually, and then I can turn my camera back on, already back on, and there we go. Hopefully everyone's still with us.
Brilliant. Smashing. Thanks so much for that, Daniel. Yeah, does anyone have questions? I'm sure there was yeah, there'll be yeah, quite a lot to digest there, which is yeah, really, really good information. Yeah, should we
what I can do is I can answer the questions that were sent through, Aidan.
Oh yeah,
there was 3 that we've got to work from. The number 1 was, how can we repair the goal areas after they've taken such a battering? There's a couple of ways you can do this. It depends on the condition that they're in currently. If you're in a situation where they're holding water and they're sunken because they've become compact, the best thing to do starting from now is to try and restore the levels so they're not, you know, holding water. You're not going to be able to grow grass underwater essentially when it's raining, when it rains and the goldmouths collect water. So first is to try to restore the levels. If they are completely bare, then it's going to be really challenging to bring them back when they're in use consistently. You can adopt the little and often approach and continue to apply seed to the goalmouths. The goalkeeper will do you a favour in terms of treading it into the ground. But if they are threadbare, it's going to be really difficult because there's no cover, grass cover, to protect that juvenile grass. You may get to the end of the season and consider returfing it if they are awful. That is an option, but then again, you're going to need to consider irrigation solutions to establish that turf. You can, once play has suspended, I would, if you don't want to turf them, which can be difficult to establish turf, you know, during the summer, you can do what I've spoken about earlier and make sure that the levels are good, get some holes into the ground in them, so if it does rain, they do drain down into the soil profile. Apply grass seed and then cover them off, and then allow that seed to germinate and just nurture that seed through and keep topping it up until you've got full coverage and establishment. yeah, just try and keep people off it if they are threadbare. If you have got a reasonable amount of coverage, say 50-60%, you can start topping them up now with seed. But the take home message is really like prevention is better than cure. And when next season, when you do start to see them going, then that's the time to okay, we're starting to see some wear in the goal mouths. We're not, the surface levels are good at the moment. I'm still going to apply some dressing. I'm still going to get some holes into the ground. I'm still going to get some seed into them. And it just will help you sustain that grass cover through the season. The next question is around cricket and the crossover between football and cricket. Really, this is just developing good working relationships with the cricket club. Cricket are in a, if football's had a difficult winter, cricket are looking ahead for a very challenging spring in terms of, we're in March now, you'd be expecting to carry out some kind of pre-season rolling. There are cricket clubs that can't get the roller out of the shed because the outfield's still holding water. It's really challenging. What I would suggest is just open up a line of good communication with the cricket club and just ask where they're at, what they need to happen before. I mean, it's quite a vague question realistically, but it's just a case of having a good relationship with anybody, any stakeholder that's involved in your pitch, and realistically just open up an honest line of communication. Cricket's really suffering at the moment because if football pitches are wet, you can imagine how wet squares are currently. So just communication is everything. We suffer badly with wormcast invasions, which ruin our pitches every winter. Is there a remedy? The chemical that was available to control worms has been taken off the market, as a lot of people will know. There's a lot that you can do to improve the conditions or discourage worms. One of the things to do is and it's really challenging, and it boils down to good grounds maintenance, is to sustain a good amount of soil cover, good amount of grass cover, whereby you're not cutting your grass very short. You're leaving your winter pitch at 35 to 40 millimeters. The soil, then the worm casts are less noticeable. Applications of sand top dressing to your pitch will deter worms, because they don't like the coarse feeling of sand on their skin. They much prefer the soil. There are products available, and they're marketed as soil conditioners that do suppress worms. If you have got a real issue with worm casts, this isn't me recommending the use of soil conditioners, but this is me signposting to speak to people that are in that consumables representatives that might have access to those products to give you advice on the use of them. We all know they're out there. It's a bit of an odd situation being able to use them for that. They're marketed as something completely different, but for me, for you to improve your pitch, if that's what you need to go down, I'm just signposting that they're out there. Essentially, there's no hard and fast way to remove worm casts. The worms are actually really beneficial for the soil, but the detriment is that you do have worm casts on the surface. So they're the three that have been sent in. If there's any others, or anybody wants to come off mute or type into the the chat, I'd be happy to answer while I'm still here. Equally, if somebody gets off the call this evening and has a burning question, my number's on the presentation, my email's on there, so feel free to reach out, and we can pick up any conversation thereafter. If there's no questions, I'll thank everyone for their attendance this evening, and yeah, hopefully you've got something from it, and just know that we're here to support you, you know, through this journey. And if there's something you need, we're available to do that.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for that, Daniel. So yeah, if there's no other questions, then I'll yeah, just kind of wrap the evening up, I guess. So I guess just to reiterate what Daniel's kind of mentioned in terms of the next steps. So planning those end of season works will be kind of your next step, and looking to implement a lot of what Daniel's mentioned tonight. Key bit is to get your pitch power assessments in before the end of March. So I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier, but if you started your pitch power assessment and not submitted it by the end of March, then the data could be wiped or will be wiped. So if you're midway through an assessment and you've uploaded some of the data already, make sure you continue it and get it submitted. If you haven't started it yet, but intend to do it in the next couple of weeks, then just have a think about whether you can get it all done before the end of March. And if you can't, then it might be worth starting it 1st of April onwards, just to ensure you don't have any data wiped out. A key tip that I tend to find with doing that is if you take the photos on your phone when you're doing the assessment, then if anything does happen to the data, then you've still got it to use rather than uploading straight to the app. If you haven't already got onto the grass pitch maintenance funding program, then and you've already got a pitch power report in place, then please do apply. The money's there. Even if your pitches are already at a good standard, you're still eligible for funding as well. So yeah, make sure you do submit an application, and I can provide some support if you need someone how to access that funding. Hive groundskeeping community, we've mentioned this a couple of times this evening, but yeah, do make sure that you join that, and when you do, join the Kent group as well. And finally, just to remind about the Grassroots Football Awards, which is open till nominations until Wednesday, the 3rd of April, particularly the Grounds Team of the Year award. So yeah, so that's it for this evening. So yeah, look forward to getting around and seeing a lot of your pitches over the next few months again as well, and hopefully see some improved pitches. So yeah, thanks so much all, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks everyone. Have a nice evening.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.